Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fairfield County's live webinar today on starting a business from scratch, the 5 essential steps. I'm Bob Hogan, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at Fairfield County. And I'm going to be your host today, and our presenter is Cliff Ennico. More on Cliff in just a minute, but first some brief information on SCORE. If we could move the slides, Cliff. SCORE, we have a national organization of over 11,000 volunteers, and we're part of the Small Business Administration. Locally here in Fairfield County, we have over 130 volunteers with a wide range of industry process and subject matter expertise. And as you can see on the screen, we offer 3 primary value-added services to small businesses. First one we offer is one-on-one mentoring, which is free, and you can access that by face-to-face, but in these times it's via video, telephone, email, and you can do that by requesting a mentor on our website by hitting the request mentor link, or you can use the bit.ly link that you see on the screen. The second service we offer is a wide range of educational workshops and webinars like the one today, about 150 throughout the year. And lastly, we offer extensive resources on our website, including access to our subject matter experts. Our next live webinar will be on Tuesday, July 28th at noon, and the topic is The Art of the Lean Business Canvas with Bill Schloth presenting. And you can find more specifics on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. And when you're on our website, there's also a very large number of archived websites, webinars rather, that may be of value to you, and you can access those on demand at any time. We have set aside time for Q&A today at the end of the presentation, and Cliff will take your questions at the end. And to do that, you can use the chat window at any time during the presentation, and you can do that by hovering on the bottom of your screen and clicking on the chat feature and just typing your question in. As we've said in the chat feature, the webinar is being recorded and will be available within about the next 48 hours or so on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Cliff Ennico. Cliff is a nationally recognized small business, legal, and tax expert, and is best known as the former host of Money Hunt on PBS, where entrepreneurs defended their business plans before America's toughest panel of experts. An attorney and small business consultant based in Fairfield, Connecticut, Cliff has helped launch over 15,000 businesses. He is the author of 16 books, the most recent of which is Crowdfunding Handbook, How to Raise Capital for Your Business Using Equity Funding Portals. I'll now turn it over to Cliff. Cliff, all yours.
Hey, thanks, Bob, and welcome everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your pandemic-straitened life to spend an hour listening to an attorney babble on for an hour about how to start a business from scratch. But as Bob mentioned, it's something I've done quite a bit of in my career. I'm very proud to say that I've helped over 15,000 people, achieve their dreams of self-employment in the last 30 or so years. Yes, there were no child labor laws back then. I was a child prodigy, but no, I'm afraid that is not the case. Let's just go. If you didn't believe that I was a lawyer before, you will now. We lawyers always tell you what we're not going to do for you before we tell you what we're actually going to do. The first, the thing is obviously, while I have been doing programs for SCORE now for well over 30 years, I am not myself a part of the SCORE organization. So anything that I say on this program, it's entirely me. But the more important one is the second one. And it's very important. While I'm sure some of you have specific legal and tax questions, and I will do my best to try to answer them on this program, there's a very big difference between giving out legal information and giving out legal advice. To say, well, this is what the law is generally all about. That's what these programs are all about. What I can't do on this program is now, Joe, here's what you should do, and Nancy, here's why you should do something different. That's one-on-one advice, and I really don't know any of you well enough to be able to do that on a program of this nature. So if you listen, if I say something that sounds like a great idea and you do it and it doesn't work, and you lose your business, you file for bankruptcy, you lose your house, your spouse divorces you, the kids don't want to talk to you, the dog pees on your leg, and you end up in a diaper box, living in a diaper box under the Brooklyn Bridge, you can't sue anybody. You can't sue SCORE or me or anybody else. That's what this is all about. So there are 5 steps to starting a small business. having done this a lot, I mean, sort of a general introduction. For 25 years, I taught a course at Norwalk Community College here in Southern Connecticut on starting a small business. It was a 5-night course, 3 hours per night. And these were the 5 basic steps that we covered in each of those 5 nights of the program. I'm going to be covering this in a general way from 5 miles up. I could easily do a 3-hour webinar on each one of these steps. So just so you know, we're only going to be covering the basics today, but I will give you some resources at the end of the program where you can get more information on each of these steps in a very cost-effective way. So first of all, find your customers. Now, this may sound odd to some of you, because some of you may be saying, well, wait a minute, Cliff, I've taken courses on business planning. The first thing is to find the idea that you do. I mean, don't you have to start with the idea, the concept, the executive summary? The answer is no. Before you even think of what your business is going to be, it's a good idea to think about who your potential customers are. And as weird as it sounds, you can do that without having a particular idea in mind. At the end of the day, every small business is a service business. You are in the business of serving somebody. You remember the old Bob Dylan song from the 80s, you got to serve somebody, right? You got to serve somebody. And who are they? Think about who these people are. Your customers are not everyone. Every once in a while I'll meet somebody at a score thing and they'll say, oh, well, I serve everybody. Everybody can use my product or service. That's not true. You're going to find when you get into business that there's only a certain select group of people who will buy things. And in fact, there are only certain people who will buy anything from you. Go back to high school and look at if you still have your old high school yearbook, dust it off, take a look at it, and look at the people who signed your yearbook and the people who didn't. If you look at them and if you remember who they were, you'll see that the people who signed your yearbook, they weren't just random. This was a certain type of person that you became close to, that you were friendly with, back in the day. There are people in this world who will buy anything from you, whether it's, antiques or consulting services or legal services. Who are these people? They're generally people that you know well. That you understand. It really doesn't, I hate to say it, I don't really care if you like them or not. I really don't. But I find that the better you know your customers, the more likely you will succeed in a small business of your own. Who are the people that you really know? Who are the people who are simpatico with you? Who do you get? Who gets you? Who do you get? What kinds of people do you naturally gravitate toward? Who are the sort of people who naturally gravitate toward you? Back in high school, there are really only 3 kinds of high school kid. When you think about it, I don't think this has changed in the many years since I was in high school. There are the jocks, the geeks, and the artsy types. Those are the sort of the 3 high school archetypes. Which one were you? And, more importantly, which ones were your friends? Because it's very interesting. I kind of thought of myself when I was in high school, as sort of a geeky guy. I wore a pocket protector. I was very into math and science and all that kind of stuff. I was a geek before it became fashionable. Okay, let's just say it that way. But very interestingly enough, when I go back and I look at my yearbook, all of my closest friends in high school were artsy types. And that is interesting because I was also into theater and drama and all that kind of stuff. So everyone, you have to think about this. For some reason, the artsy kids saw something in me that the geeks did not. Think about that. Who are the people who really, next time you go to a high school reunion, which of course is now going to be virtual, with the pandemic, really ask these people, when you think about me, when you think about who Cliff Ennico was back then, what do you think about? What was your image of me back then? This will tell you wonderful information about who your natural customers are going to be. Because you got to be careful. If you don't know your market, what happens is you end up selling to stereotypes. And that is, first of all, it's a very bad thing to do to anyone. It's racist, it's whatever, sexist, whatever. But more importantly, you will not succeed doing that because inevitably you'll misread your clients. People are more complicated than you think they are, and they will surprise you. So if I told you, okay, here's a business, I think that lawyers would buy this particular product, okay? now I'm assuming if you don't have lawyers in your family, or if you're not close to many lawyers, you're probably going to say, well, what do lawyers care about? What do lawyers, think about when they buy stuff? Okay. If you really don't know lawyers well, you'll have a tough time answering that question. And I'll give you a graphic example of that in just a minute. Okay. Because here's the thing, you have to know your customers. And here's why you have to know a lot about your customers. Now, I have to say, I have a YouTube video. Some of you may have actually watched it. It's sort of my classic thing. I do have a YouTube channel with about 40 videos on there, but my flagship video is this video, which is actually a SCORE presentation that I did for SCORE Fairfield County about 5 years ago, called How to Sell Anything to Anybody. If you go to YouTube and search for Cliff Ennico, How to Sell, you'll find that it's an hour of your life well spent. But one of the things I talk about in there is that there's two reasons, and really only two, why anybody buys anything. We've all been taught to think that it's needs and wants, but that really isn't true. People do not buy things they need, especially. And there are reasons for that, which I get into on the video. The two reasons, though, that people do buy things are fears and passions. Does your product or service turn people on in some way, get them more excited about life? If it does, then you probably have a passion cell that you can use to get them to arouse those passions, and get them to buy your stuff. The other set of motivators is fears. Does your product and service help people sleep better at nights and worry less about certain things that are going on in this world? If you have a product or service that genuinely will help people alleviate their fears, they will march to your door, even especially in bad times. In times such as these, people are cutting back on their passion purchases. Think bars, think restaurants, think luxury goods. But they will hit up their credit cards to buy products and services that will alleviate their fears. Hand sanitizers, toilet paper. You get the idea here. And this is why you need to know your customers, because if you don't really know your customers as well, you cannot answer those questions. What are their fears? What are their passions? These are very intimate questions. You really can't ask these questions about total strangers, people that you don't get. So going back to my lawyer example, what do lawyers fear? What do lawyers get excited about? Well, believe it or not, and most of you, if you don't know lawyers, you'd say, oh, well, lawyers are greedy people. All they care about is money. What do lawyers fear? Well, they probably fear, malpractice suits and stuff like that. And you'd be partially right. But there was a bar association a number of years ago that actually did a survey of lawyer satisfaction each year. And one of the questions they asked was, when you think about your practice and your professional life, what is your biggest worry? What keeps you awake at nights? And it's going to surprise you. What do you think the answer to that question was? The answer, 90% of respondents all said the same thing. Okay. And it wasn't any of the things that you would think about. It wasn't fear of malpractice suit, fear of an ethical violation, not getting paid by a client. Okay. Those are all good things, and they were definitely on the list. But the number one thing that lawyers feared, believe it or not, and worried about was, are you ready for it? Not having enough time with their families. We lawyers work extremely long hours. I'm still, even with the pandemic and at my advanced age, circling the drain here, I am working 70 hours a week on average. Lawyers worry that their kids are going to grow up not knowing who daddy is. They worry about not spending enough time with their spouse and not having a quality of life. They worry about growing old too soon. If you don't know lawyer, if you have a lawyer in your family or you're close to a lawyer, you know what I'm talking about. But if you don't, this would not even occur to you. This is why if you don't know your customers, you can easily make mistakes because your customers are in a different place than you think they are. When you don't know your customers, you end up selling to stereotypes, and stereotypes don't buy anything. Okay, only real people do. You got to know what really motivates people, and that involves some paying them very close attention. How do they learn about new products and services? How are you going to get your message across? Are they readers or are they visual people? Lawyers are readers. We do not believe anything unless it's in print. That's how we are. You know, it don't mean nothing until you sign upon the dotted line. That was a rock song from the 80s, I think. Lawyers are like that. Other people, I mean, if you're selling to teenagers, for example, don't give them anything to read. They won't read it. They'll roll it up and they'll smoke it, is what they'll do. They're more motivated by what's going on their smartphones. They're more you know, visual people. Especially, they're very motivated. Teenagers especially are motivated by their friends and what their friends are doing. So if you have a product that's appealing or service that's appealing to teenagers, you got to get buzz going on in the local teenager communities, and get buzz going on. Hey, there's this new rock band called, you know, Renegade Lawyers. Are really cool. By the way, that is the name of an actual rock band, by the way, called Renegade Lawyers. I think they're a hair band or something, like, you know, like heavy metal or something like that. You know, do they like flash, or do they go for just the kids? So if you don't know your customers, you may need a business partner who does. If you have a product or service that appeals to a certain group of people, but you don't know them all that well, my advice to you is going to be, get a partner in your business who really gets that demographic, that community, and who will know how to market to those people. So understanding your market is key, and you do that before you even come up with an idea for the business. You know, I would much rather see people designing their business to the customers that they know, rather than come up with a business idea, build it, and then go out scrambling looking for people to buy it. The latter approach seldom, if ever, works. Okay, moving on to step 2. So now you've understand your market. You got 50 groups of people that you could potentially sell stuff to. Now, who are your competition here? Who are your competitors? Well, you do have competitors. Every once in a while, I'm in a score thing, and I get somebody who tells me, "Hey, Cliff, you know, this is so unique. We're so different. We're so ahead of the curve. We don't really have any competition." And I have to bite my lip when people say that, because you're not lying to me. You're lying to yourself. What you're telling me is you really haven't spent enough time looking for competitors. They're out there. You're just not seeing them because you're not looking hard enough. Competitors come in 4 flavors, and it's very easy to overlook them. You know, and I use this chart to sort of explain the 4 different groups of competitors. The obvious one is the one in the top left corner. Competitors, let's look at the green boxes first. Competitors can be either direct or indirect. Okay, a direct competitor is somebody, a competitor is defined by your market, not what your product and service is. You know, you and I can be doing the exact same thing, but if we're serving different markets and different demographics, we are not competitors at all. You're not going to take a single sale away from me. I'm not going to take a single sale away from you. What we're doing is compatible, but we're not really competitors. A competitor is someone who is targeting the same markets and the same people that you are trying to target, and are trying to address the same fears and passions that those people are feeling. So a direct competitor is somebody who's going after the same people you're going after, and they're trying to address the same fears and passions that you are trying to address, using the same or a similar product or service. That's a direct competitor. An indirect competitor is somebody who is trying to address the same customers and the same fears and passions, but using a different product or service than what you are doing. So here's my example. Let's say that you have a pizza parlor on your local commercial strip, and you're doing takeout orders. You're probably doing okay, because most people take out pizza. They don't eat on premises. So you're probably surviving during the pandemic. But let's say you have a pizza parlor on your local commercial strip. The 3 other pizza parlors on that strip are your direct competitors. They're targeting the same people you're trying to target, the same fears and passions, and pizza is the product. Okay, that's what we mean by a direct competitor. An indirect competitor would be the Chinese takeout place down the street. Now, that person doesn't have, their menu doesn't look anything like yours. They're not doing pizza or meatballs or spaghetti or anything like that. They're doing, you know, egg foo young and egg rolls and all that kind of stuff. I always end up getting hungry when I do this presentation for some reason. I always default to food examples. I guess that says a lot about who I am. But even though that person's menu doesn't look anything like yours, to some extent, extent, they are a competitor of yours. If I'm driving down that strip and I want to stop for a quick lunch, I can either get a slice of pizza or an egg roll. So to some extent, they are your competitors, even though their product is completely different than what you have. So that's direct and indirect. But we can't just look at direct and indirect. We also have to look at the difference between actual and potential competitors. This has to do with timing. An actual competitor is someone who is actually in the marketplace today. So if I have a pizza parlor on my local commercial strip, the 3 other pizza parlors that are already in business selling pizza, they are my actual competitors. They're in my face today selling pizza. But a potential competitor is somebody who is not in the market today, but they could easily get into the marketplace. And here's the key: if they did get into my marketplace, they would wipe me out. Generally, when we talk about potential competitors, we're talking about people who are a lot bigger than we are and who have economies of scale. So big box retailers, chain restaurants, franchises are potential competitors. If I have a pizza parlor on Black Rock Turnpike in Fairfield, and I find out that one of you is planning to open a pizza parlor, well, I'm not really that worried about that. You're a mom and pop like me. I've been around for a while. My customers, I'm going to work hard to keep my customers with me. So, you're going to have a tough time breaking in because there's too many pizza parlors in my town, which, by the way, is true. There are, so bring it on. That's going to be my attitude. But let's say that you are Olive Garden or Sbarro or one of the Italian themed chain restaurants. Okay, if I hear that an Olive Garden is coming down the street with a full liquor license, full capacity, of course, with the pandemic, of course, this is not as big as it once was, but go with me on this. If I hear that that's going to be moving down the street, I'm a lot more worried about that than I am another mom and pop competitor. Again, potential competitors are bigger than you are. So now that we have done this, now let's take a look at this chart and let's go through the boxes. A direct competitor, someone who's doing the exact same thing that you're doing, who's in your face, we call this the enemy. And these are the easy people to spot. Whenever I meet somebody at a thing and they say, I have no competition, what they're really telling me is, I've looked in this box, Cliff, and I don't see anybody. And you may be right. You may not have any enemies, any direct actual competitors, but that doesn't mean that you don't have other types of competitors. And they probably are out there if you look hard enough. An indirect competitor who is actually in your face, think the pizza parlor versus the Chinese takeout joint. We call those substitutes. People can choose either one or the other. A question I will often ask you if I'm interviewing you the first time we talk on the phone is, if people could not afford your product or service, what other things could they buy that are more cost effective? So butter versus margarine. Reading a 200-page book versus on how to interview for a job versus talking to somebody and getting one-on-one advice on how to interview for a particular job. These are examples of substitutes. And sometimes the substitutes are more compelling than what you're doing. If you're looking for a job, would you rather sit down and read a 200-page book on interviewing techniques? Or would you rather talk to somebody who has worked for that company before and who can tell you exactly what that interviewer's hot buttons are going to be? You will gladly pay more money to do the latter. I guarantee that. Now let's look at the bottom boxes. A potential competitor, somebody who's not in the marketplace today, but if they ever did move into your marketplace, they'd be a direct competitor. They've got huge economies of scale. They could sell things for a fraction of what you can afford to sell them for. They will wipe you out. I'm just calling them big boxes or franchises. I want to get across the point here that these are bigger than people who are much bigger than you are. Last but not least, though, this last box, the indirect competitors of the future. Now, are we starting to get into la-la land here? Are we getting here speculative here? The answer is no. These may be your most compelling business competitors. I actually myself shut down a business in the early aughts because I saw who was in this box, and I didn't like what I saw. I didn't think that I could compete with these people. The indirect competitors of the future, the indirect / potential people, these are the people who are going to change the world. These are the people who are going to make your product or service obsolete. They are the paradigm shifters. So back around the year 2000, if you had a bookstore, a small mom and pop bookstore, one of the biggest competitors you were facing was the internet. The internet wiped out a lot of businesses. Right now, the biggest indirect potential competitor that most small businesses are facing is the pandemic. It's COVID-19. COVID-19 is going to change a lot of paradigms in the business world. How many of you are thinking about going to a movie theater right now? How many people are thinking about going to a mall right now? How many people are thinking about going to a gym and working out with 50 other sweaty people not wearing masks? You get the idea here. Okay. Sometimes your competitors are not a who, they are a what. And I think for a lot of businesses today, a lot of businesses need to look at this particular box and ask yourself, how is the pandemic and COVID-19 going to change what my customers are looking for? And can I morph into another type of business that they will be more willing to buy? Okay. You can't, once you've identified your competitors, you have to ask yourself, how am I better than them? You can't just say, well, here I am, I'm another pizza parlor. You can't do that. And whenever I ask this question, what is your competitive advantage? Most people will say, well, I'm going to give them better service. I'm going to service the hell out of my customers, and they're going to all want to come to me because I'm going to give them better service. I have a very, very nasty message for you. I have to burst your bubble here. And I really, I can't provide you with a statistical source for this. I'm only going to say that in 30 years of my life working with small businesses, over 15,000 of them, I have to tell you, better service is not a competitive advantage. People want better service. Don't get me wrong. Your customers want better service, but they're not willing to pay for it. They're not willing to pay. People will not want to pay a premium for better service. And that is just a hard and difficult lesson, an inconvenient truth that I have learned in 30 years of working with small businesses. The epitaph on many of the tombstone of a small business is, I really thought my customers would stay with me because I provide better service. People want the better service, but they also want the cheaper price. How many of you here have looked at, I get a catalog called Daedalus Books. This is a lovely, catalog of some of the newer books that are coming out, and they're wonderful and they're great, but, they tend to be offered at a premium price. How many of you here have, looked at something like this, or have gone to a store before the pandemic, of course, and have looked at, an article of clothing, a pair of shoes or whatever, and then went on Amazon and bought it to get the 20 to 30% off with Amazon Prime? Okay. How many of you have done this? The answer is we all have done this. Okay. Better service is not the answer. You can have a better product, but your competitive advantage can be something a lot simpler. It can be just a more convenient location, who you are. Seriously, folks, these three words that you are looking at right now, se habla español, put them on your business cards, your stationery, your website, your social media. Let people know that you speak Spanish and you speak it well. You will double your business overnight. I almost guarantee it. The Hispanic community in the United States is very underserved by a lot of service providers. If you can speak Spanish and can speak to these people in their own language, you will increase your business. Of course, you have to be able to speak it, and please do not try to speak your high school Spanish from 30 years ago. That will not fly. Okay, you kind of have to speak conversational Spanish the way they do. But if you can do that, if you speak a different language, or if you're a member of a particular cultural group or an ethnic group, take advantage of that. People feel more comfortable doing business with people who they perceive as being like them. So, for example, I have a vowel at the end of my name. My grandfather was Italian. He came here from Italy in the early 1900s. I will tell you, though, I was not raised in an Italian household. Many of you on this call know more about Italian American culture than I do, but I do do get a lot of clients with Italian American surnames because they look at my name and they say, hey, this guy's a paisan, I feel comfortable with him. Take advantage of what you have. Last but not least, don't overlook your personality. I mean, there's a gazillion lawyers out there. You know, why am I doing better than a lot of my competitors right now? Well, I think a lot of it is just my personality. The fact that I do programs like this, the fact that I make people laugh. I mean, I actually tell clients this. The one warranty I make about my legal services is I will make you laugh as part of this process. I think I'm the only attorney in the United States who gives that warranty, but because of that, people feel more comfortable with me than a lot of other lawyers who they are afraid are judging them. You know, let's face it, if you're going to a lawyer, people do not call their lawyers when they're having a nice day. You know, if you're talking to a lawyer, chances are your life is not going as well as it should be, and you are afraid that your lawyer is judging you. Oh my God, you did that? How stupid is that? How did you get, the IRS is going after you for that? Man, nobody does. Yeah. That's not how I approach the world. I approach the world, hey, you got a problem? Great, you're in the right place. This is exactly what I do for a living. I can definitely help you out here, and you'll probably survive. You'll probably survive with this. So that's the thing. Okay, step number 3. Those are the most important ones. We're gonna pick up the pace here because the last 3 are less important. The first 2 are very important. Okay, feeding your business. What resources do you have to start the business? And when most people think about this, they think about money, but money's not the only thing. Okay, but let's start with money. Do you have enough money to get this business off the ground? Even in good times, in pre-pandemic times, I was telling people you should always have enough cash or credit on hand for 6 to 9 months operating expenses, rent, payroll, your fixed costs. If you do not have enough cash on hand or enough credit lines on hand for that long a period of time, you know, you have to be prepared for a shutdown of at least 6 to 9 months. Do I have to explain why you have to do this in the middle of a pandemic? I mean, the pandemic has simply proved that what I've been telling people for 30 years is right. The businesses that are struggling and that are going under are businesses that operated on very, very thin margins. Okay. You know, you got to have enough cash on credit to survive a 6 to 9 month downturn. The second thing is, how long is it going to take for your business to break even? Now, there's a very technical definition of breaking even, but I'm not going to go into that. Just think of breaking even as a point in time in which your customers are supporting the business. Your customers are providing you with enough revenue each month that you can pay your basic operating expenses and there's a little bit left over to live on. That's what I call breaking even. It's as simple as that. How long is it going to take you to get there? Most businesses don't break even from day one. You know, it's going to take you probably 3, 6, 9 months before you get to this point. During that period of time, you're going to have to pay all the operating expenses of the business out of your own resources, your cash, your credit cards, whatever resources you have. Do you have enough money to last that long? You have to know your expenses and you have to know them cold for the first 12 months. The first thing you do, and your SCORE counselor will help you do this. They're very good at this. This is one of the main reasons why SCORE exists, is to help you do a cash flow projection so you can figure out how long it's going to take you to break even. And the first step is make sure you know your expenses cold. What do you need to run this business? What are you going to have to spend money on? And how much you're going to have to spend for the first 12 months of the business. You got to know that cold, down to the penny. Once you know that, then it's a lot easier to figure out how much revenue you need each month to be able to cover those expenses, and that will tell you what your break-even point is going to be. But money is not the only thing you need for a business. Do you have all the right skills? I've learned over the years that every business has at least 5 or 6 essential tasks that you must do yourself. These are things you cannot delegate to other people, to employees, to professionals, whatever. These are the things you got to do yourself because no one is going to do them as well as you can. And these are the things that must be done perfectly or extremely well for the business to succeed. Can you do all of them yourself? If you cannot, then that's a sign that you need a partner, somebody who can come in and can do the essential tasks that you cannot do yourself. Do you have enough time for this business? This is a very personal thing. How will the business change your life? A successful business is a time vampire. It will eat your life like nothing else. If you're the kind of a person who enjoys playing golf on Saturday, let's say you have a foursome, three buddies that you've been golfing with for years, you've been doing this for a while, do not start a retail business, because traditionally Saturday is the busiest day in retail. You will not have time to play golf on Saturday. You might be able to play golf on Wednesday, but if your three buddies can't break free to play golf on Wednesday, you're going to lose those friendships. That's always make sure that your spouse is involved. You'll see, you should always have 5 people on your advisory board. You need good advisors. You need a good accountant, bookkeeper to help with the financial stuff, a good lawyer to help you protect you against liability, a good insurance person, very essential in helping you manage your risks, a good mentor. This is why SCORE exists. I have been referring clients to SCORE for over 30 years. Not a single one has ever come back in all that time and said, well, this was a bad idea. This guy was a jerk. He didn't know what he was doing. That has not happened in 30 years. Most often, the feedback I get is, this was very helpful. I mean, most of the stuff we discussed was stuff I already knew, but at least I feel better now knowing that I'm doing the right thing and I'm on the right track. SCORE is a wonderful resource, and you're a fool if you don't take advantage of it. Your spouse or significant other. Now, I'm not saying you should go into business with your spouse. That's a very personal thing. I could give a whole course on just that, but your spouse or significant other should at least know enough about your business so that they can help you with the personal side of it. You are going to be a different person if you have a successful small business. Will your spouse be able to live with that? With the fact that you're not as available now as you used to be because you're working 90 hours a week to make this thing a success. How is that going to affect your marriage? How is that going to affect your relationships? You got to involve them enough so that you can get advice on that, and nobody else will be able to help you with that but your spouse or significant other. Okay, step 4, identifying risks and protecting your business against them. By far and away, the most common question that I get whenever I'm advising a new client is, hey, Cliff, I'm starting this business, but I think it's really going to be a success, but for God's sake, I don't want to lose my house. If I lose my house, I'm losing my marriage. My wife will divorce me. The kids won't want to talk to me. My dog will pee on my leg, and I'll be living in a diaper box under the Brooklyn Bridge. I don't want that as my future. How can I protect my business from being sued? Okay, there are 5 basic ways in which you can keep lawsuits at a minimum, and you should definitely plan for these things. The first thing is you should form a corporation or LLC, a limited liability company. If you go to my website at cliffennico.com, I actually have a downloadable 7-page document. It's called Demystifying the Business Organization, where I go into great detail about the differences between corporations and S corporations and LLCs and the various legal ways that you can set up your business. Download this thing, print it out. It's about 7 pages long. Sit down tonight and read it with a fine VSOP brandy or other liquor of choice. And I guarantee you will know as much as most lawyers and accountants know about corporations, LLCs, and all the legal entities that are out there. But with all of them, what you're doing here is you're taking your personal assets off the table. When you form a corporation or an LLC or an S corp, what you are doing is you are putting a wall up between your personal assets, the stuff that doesn't relate to your business, and your business assets. By putting up a corporation or LLC, if somebody sues you, they'll still be able to get to your business assets. That's why you need insurance on those things. But your personal assets, your house, your cars, your kids' college tuition fund, your personally autographed photograph of Elvis Presley, all of that stuff is behind the wall and is protected from attack. That's why you do it. You can do it yourself. I know some people, think that they can go to the Secretary of State's website and do it. And if you spend a couple of your hours of your life figuring it out, you probably can figure how to set up the LLC yourself, at least online. But that is only the first step in the process. Do not do this yourself. If you're going to do it, if you're going to form a corporation or LLC, hire a lawyer. Have your accountant do it. Accountants form corporations or LLCs for their clients. They're often cheaper than lawyers are. There are services online such as LegalZoom, which will set up a corporation or LLC for you. But whatever you do, don't do it yourself. There are several steps involved in setting up a corporation or an LLC, and just registering with the Secretary of State's office is just step one. There are 5 or 6 other steps that must be completed before you have fully formed the corporation or LLC. And even LegalZoom doesn't do them all. LegalZoom will do most of them. They'll register with the state. They'll get you your federal tax ID number. They'll give you like a basic operating agreement if you're an LLC, but they don't register your business for the state and local taxes. That is something that a lawyer or an accountant will do for you. If you don't do it, if you don't do that last step, you're going to start getting nasty letters from government agencies you've never even heard of, and you're not going to be able to figure out which ones are real and which ones are not, which ones you have to do and which ones you don't. I always tell people, use a lawyer or an accountant to do it. Yes, they're a little bit more expensive than doing it on LegalZoom, but believe me, it's money well paid. You do not have the, it's taken me 40 years of my life to learn how to do an LLC in 15, 20 minutes. How long is it going to take you to set up an LLC from scratch? Chances are it's going to be a lot more than that. By hiring a lawyer, you are managing your time. Okay, secondly, buy as much insurance as you can. Remember, even with a corporation or LLC, creditors and plaintiffs can still get to your business assets. You got to have insurance on those. And there's 2 kinds of insurance you have to have. There's commercial liability. In some states, it's called general liability. This is slip and fall insurance. If you have a storefront and somebody comes to pick up their takeout and they slip and fall and they break their ass, this is the insurance that protects you against those kinds of liabilities. But there's a second type of insurance you need to called errors and omissions. If you're a consultant, for example, this is malpractice insurance. If you're an IT consultant and you do work on a client's computer and you let a virus in there and they get one of those ransomware things and they end up losing all their assets and stuff like that, their bank accounts get cleaned out, they are going to sue you for letting that happen. So every small business, especially consultants, need what we call errors and omissions insurance, E&O coverage. Thirdly, put disclaimer language in all of your contracts and legal forms, things that say you're not liable for anything, kind of like the disclaimer that I had at the beginning of this program. Now, sometimes the courts enforce them, sometimes they don't, but if you don't have them in your contract, they will not be there to protect you. Most of the time, courts will enforce disclaimers if they're properly drafted. If you don't put them in your contract, though, they will not be there to protect you. Get them in there. Have an attorney do that for you. Fourthly, consider transferring assets into your spouse's name. Now, this is a little tricky here. So for example, if you're setting up a consulting business and you're working out of your house, you might want to put title to the house into your spouse's name. A lot of people do that. So that way, if anybody is tempted to sue you, they'll see that the house is not in your name, and it makes you what they call judgment proof. This is tricky, though, and I don't always recommend that you do it. You're putting a lot of stress on your marriage. You are making when you put title to your house into your spouse's name, that is a legal transfer of title. You got to do exactly the same stuff as you do when you're transferring your house into a stranger's name. And if you ever get divorced, God forbid, down the road, you will not only be without a spouse, you will be homeless, because your spouse now owns the asset and he or she can boot you out legally. Unless you are 100% certain of your marriage, do not do this. Okay. Let's say that you are not married. Let's say that you're single, and you don't have a spouse, but you have a very loving mom who's willing to take title to your house, and she's willing to do this. Okay. Be very careful. Make sure that when you do this, she changes her will so that when she dies, the house comes back to you. I've seen situations where clients have transferred their houses into their parents' names. The parents die, and all of a sudden now their siblings own a piece of their house, because that's the way the estate laws work. Okay, if you're going to transfer to someone other than a spouse, make sure that they change their will so that if, God forbid, something bad happens to them, they die of COVID or whatever, that the asset comes back to you. And then last but not least, the best way to protect yourself against liability, don't do business with crazy people. Whenever a client of mine is being sued by someone, or they have a bad experience with a client or a customer, almost the very first words that come out of their mouths, Cliff, I knew it. I knew it. I had a bad feeling about this guy from the beginning. I knew they were going to be trouble. I knew they were going to be problematic. Your gut is a lot better than a lot smarter than you are. Okay. If you're dealing with someone and they just come at you weird in some way, trust your gut. There's probably a reason why your gut feels this way. If you really sense that someone, you do not have to do business with everyone who calls you. You do not have to take on everybody who knocks on your door. There's no law that says that you have to do that. Obviously, there are some laws you can't discriminate, you can't do stuff like that. But there's no law that says you must take every client on board that calls you. If you really sense that somebody is a wackadoodle, do not just say no, or better yet, say, you know what, I'm too busy. This is what I do. I say, whenever I'm dealing with somebody who's a wackadoodle, I say, you know what, this is a very interesting situation. This is the kind of work I do, but I'm frankly under the gun to get my next book done. I'm not going to have time to even think about this for the next 3 or 4 months. Here's another attorney in town that you can call. He does this work as well. I'm sure you'll have a good experience with them. And who am I referring you to? My worst enemy. This is the lawyer in town that I hate the most. If I think you're a wackadoodle, I want him to be your lawyer. I want you dealing with my, does that sound cynical, by the way? Have you, seriously, this is what you do. Whenever a wackadoodle calls you, that is an opportunity to really give your competition a black eye. Take advantage of it. Okay. Last but not least, step 5. I do see a couple of questions coming in, and I will answer them. But let's talk about the final steps so I don't go over. Comply with the law and pay your taxes. Notice, by the way, this is step 5. We don't really worry about the legal stuff until you know who your customers are, who your competitors are, and that you have enough resources to get the business off the ground. Those are the more important things. If you haven't nailed down all of that stuff, you shouldn't really be thinking about, should I be a corporation or an LLC? Should I get an extra policy of E&O insurance? This is all the stuff that comes at the end of the process. This is the things you do when you're getting started with your business and not just thinking about what the business is going to be. This is the least important stuff that you have to do. In any business that you start, the government is your business partner here in the United States. There are some countries, I actually am going to be doing a webinar next month for an entrepreneurs group that's in one of the African countries, the sub-Saharan African countries. And when I got to this point, they wanted me to talk about this stuff. They said the guy, my promoter there, laughed at me and said, Cliff, you don't have to worry about that. We don't have to deal with that here. In this, we don't have to deal with regulations and stuff like that. All we have to do is pay the right official, and we get what we need. I don't want to say any more about that, but there are some places in the world where this is not the case. But here in the United States, the government is your business partner. There are taxes you have to pay, and there are regulations you have to follow. First thing you have to think about, do you need a license for this business? Cliff Ennico's rule of thumb, if you are doing something in your business that has the potential to hurt someone, if it is not done well, there is probably a license somewhere that you need to get. If your product or service has the capacity of injuring someone, if it's not done well, chances are you got to get a license to do it. So if you're cutting people's hair, you need a license. If you're helping people with their investments, you need a license. If you're practicing law or accounting, you need a license. Pretty obvious stuff. Can you or should you trademark your business name? I have a whole YouTube video called Trademark Basics, Cliff Ennico Trademark Basics on YouTube. If you're interested in this, not all names are trademarkable, but if you're looking to build a brand, either online or off, if you're trying to build, a brand around your products or services, you must have a registered trademark. It's that simple. Before you even think about opening this business, you should find out if your trademark can be registered with the Patent and Trademark Office and do it. It may set you back a couple of $1,000s in legal fees. It's not a cheap process, but if you're relying on a particular name for that product or service, and you're looking to build a brand either nationwide or otherwise, you have to make sure that no one else can glom it on you. And it's worthwhile spending the money to make sure that is done properly. Hire a lawyer, but not the kind of lawyer who just sues people. what we call a litigator. You need a lawyer who can teach you what you need to know. Do not take legal advice from the internet. Do not take legal advice from the internet. Most of it, I will tell you, I see a lot of things on the internet that are just purely wrong. And many of the people who are giving this advice are people, even some lawyers, don't know what they are doing. Okay, they just, I mean, about a year ago, they arrested some kid. I can't remember where he was. He was in Texas or Oklahoma or that part of the country. This was a 12-year-old kid who had a legal blog online and was giving legal advice to people. 12 years old. I mean, forgive me, you can't even get into law school until you're like 20 years old. Okay. And then they got this kid, and I don't know what they did with him. He didn't go to jail or anything like that. But can you imagine a 12-year-old kid was giving legal advice? How good do you think that advice was? Okay. Probably pretty good. Who knows? I mean, but the point of the matter is, get somebody who can teach you what you need to know. Be very careful what you read online. There's a lot of misinformation here. Some of it, there is good stuff on generally speaking, if you're looking at something that was actually posted by a law firm or somebody or somebody who knows what they're doing, a judge or something, that's probably more reliable. But somebody online is just saying, oh, if you get divorced, this stuff happens, X, Y, and Z. They usually don't know what they're talking about. It's taking me 40 years to be able to do programs like this. Someone who's only has tangential knowledge of it cannot do it. Last but not least, you have to pay taxes. Sorry. It's how can I say it? It's the government's way of congratulating you for a job well done. Poor people do not have tax problems. Homeless people do not have tax problems. Successful people have tax problems. Whenever the government imposes a tax on you or they raise the taxes, it's their way of patting you on the head and saying, congratulations, you are doing great. Keep up the good work. That is their way of thanking you for your success. Thank you for your service, not pay your taxes. Okay. Hire a good bookkeeper or accountant, at least for the first year. After the first year or so, you'll usually be able to know enough that you'll be able to do your own tax returns and do your like your sales tax filings and stuff like that. But for the first year, it's all going to be kind of overwhelming. Get a good bookkeeper or accountant to help you. Get a federal tax ID number. Do not use your social security number as a business ID. Now, the IRS does allow this. If you are a sole proprietor, it's just you can use your social security number as a business ID, but it's a very bad idea because you're going to have to give that number out to lots of total strangers that you don't want knowing your social security number. Get a federal tax ID number. It takes about 5 minutes online and it's cheap, or better yet, have your accountant or lawyer do it. Register, if you're in Connecticut, register with Connecticut's tax authority. It's called the Department of Revenue Services, the DRS, for income sales use. Connecticut, unlike most states, taxes services. In most states, you only have to pay sales tax on the sale of tangible goods. That is not the case here in Connecticut. There is also a wide variety of services that are subject to sales tax as well. Management consulting, for example, is a taxable service in Connecticut. A lot of people don't know that. And you'll have to sign up for taxes. Get somebody to help you here because it's very easy to guess wrong. And then make sure you keep good records. If you are ever audited by the IRS or by the Connecticut DRS or your state tax authority, your odds of surviving the audit multiply when you have good records. And then there's a last step. Know yourself. Do you have the right stuff to succeed in a small business? I have a YouTube video on this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but there are 3 personal qualities that all aspiring entrepreneurs must develop if they are to be successful. And those qualities are cynicism, looking at the world in a very realistic way, not in a romantic way, not being seduced by images, looking at the world the way it really is, even though that may be somewhat negative. Insecurity, being fearful of things, being a little bit neurotic. Paranoid people tend to make excellent entrepreneurs because they take nothing for granted. They don't get complacent. They don't get too comfortable with things. They're always looking for the bad stuff to happen, so the bad stuff usually doesn't happen to them. And last but least, which is ruthlessness, getting what you need no matter what obstacles cross your path, no matter who or what gets in your way. Not a very nice word. if you want more, now I know I've really raced through this. I have on YouTube a 6-part course on starting and running a small business. There are 6 videos that I have up there. If you go to youtube.com and search for Cliff Ennico Small Business, you'll see all 6 of these are listed there. You should watch them in order. Each one is about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. They're programs I originally did fourscore. If the thought of sitting in front of your TV and listening to a 6-hour lecture program from an attorney is something you just can't do. The program is also available on DVD from my website at succeedinginyourbusiness.com. If you click on DVD offer, you'll see how much it is, and you'll see the steps involved. It's a DVD program. You can either just listen to it as a CD, or you can watch it as a DVD. And that is all I have to say. Here are some of my best-selling books on things, and this is what I look like on a very good day when I'm not doing a webinar in my spare bedroom wearing a t-shirt and shorts. This is what I look like. So that's all I have to say. Let's take a couple of questions, Bob. I think we still have enough time for a few.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we do have enough time for questions. Just a reminder, if you do want to submit a question in the few minutes we have left, you can type it into the chat box, and we'll do it. Cliff, the first question is from Tamira, and it's a question on insurance. What is the type of insurance a non-location nutritionist and personal trainer should have?
Okay, so you're doing work in people's homes, obviously wearing a mask, okay, and that kind of thing. The short answer is you definitely need to carry what's called, general commercial liability or general liability insurance. If you slip and fall on somebody's property, the homeowner will not want that to be covered by their insurance. Now, most homeowners have insurance that would cover you against something like that. So if their dog bites you or something like that, but you can't always count on the fact that their homeowner's coverage is adequate. You should have commercial liability coverage of your own. You should definitely have errors and omissions insurance, especially if you're doing nutritious stuff. Now, depending on the kind of nutrition advice you're giving, you may have to be a licensed dietitian. So that is one thing. I don't know what state you're in, but you may have to look at the licensing laws to make sure that you don't have to have a dietitian's license to be able to give nutrition advice. Nutrition advice is one of those kind of gray areas where, if all I'm saying is, hey, Cliff, you're too fat, you need to eat more vegetables and exercise more, well, you don't need a license for that. But if you're telling people with specific food allergies or specific conditions that they have to eat certain food, that may require a dietitian's license. So that's something you have to look at. That I know that wasn't the answer to your question, but that's the first thing you should do.
Okay, we have another question about around your comments about transferring assets in your example. In regards to the example about transferring assets, won't you have to worry about estate taxes when you transfer your house to your mom and then you inherit it in your will?
That's actually a very, very good question. It's one of the reasons why you should not do this without consulting a good estate attorney. The transfer to your mom will usually not be a taxable event, although it might be in some states. I can't really say that. New York has a very Byzantine real estate transfer tax. You may have to pay a transfer tax when you transfer to your mom or to someone other than a spouse. When you transfer to a spouse, there's never a transfer tax, but there might be a tax there if you transfer to your mom. But the answer is yes, you may, the house would definitely be included in her taxable estate, and she would be the one to incur the estate taxes. So, is the additional cost worth it? The answer is you have to decide. But if you have siblings, especially, you cannot assume that when she dies, the house is going to come back to you. That is the message. There has to be what's called a specific bequest clause in the will saying that upon my death, this house located at 123 Main Street goes to my son, Cliff. That language has got to be there. And again, I'm not recommending that you do it. In all cases, if you're not sure that it's going to go well, do not do it at all. There's no law that says you have to. I point it out because it is an option, and a lot of people do this, especially professionals like to transfer their also, the other thing about that is make sure that your spouse is not working with you. So if you are transferring your house to your spouse and he or she is your business partner as well, you own the LLC together, you're 50-50, whatever, then the transfer will not work. because it would be, you know, she will be considered to be your business partner. And you know, for a transfer to work, your spouse can have nothing to do with your business. That's something I forgot to mention.
We have maybe time for another question here. Is it necessary to have an NAICS code? If I choose an NAICS code, would that limit me to doing business at whatever the code is, or will I still be able to do business as something else?
Okay. An increasing number of states are requiring this. An NAICS code, it used to be called an SIC code for your older people, is a code which sort of generally identifies what type of business you are engaged in. In Connecticut, for example, if you're registering a corporation or LLC, you must provide an NAICS code as part of that. The short answer is it does not limit you to doing business as just that. Generally speaking, you do this when you first register the business, but they don't ask you to keep it up to date. You know, so if you're doing management consulting and you decide to do a little eBay selling on the side, chances are you probably will not have to provide the state with an updated NAICS code. Although if you're doing something that is outside of that NAICS code, and especially if it's radically different from the NAICS code, you might want to talk to an attorney about creating a separate business for that thing. So if you are doing a hair salon in one of your businesses and you have an IT consulting business on the other, those are two very different kinds of business models, and you should probably have those in separate companies anyway, because the liability, the risk of liability is very different in those two businesses. You do not need general liability insurance for the IT consulting. You would need more errors and omissions insurance, whereas for the hair salon, you obviously would need general liability. That's just a simple example for that. Okay, is there a book or video resource you refer to for psychotherapists? A psychotherapist asking for advice. Boy, that's unique. Covering the information. I mean, there are some things that are out there. My best advice for you would be to check out your trade association or your professional association. Your professional association probably has recommended continuing education courses and resources that are specific to the psychotherapy profession. That would be the first place I would go to look for materials like that. You know, I mean, most of the books that I've written are books that I've written for various bar associations that are primarily used by lawyers. You know, I'm sure your profession has a similar resource page.
Okay, that's great, Cliff. I think that's all the time we have for questions. Unfortunately, it's 1 o'clock, and just a reminder to everyone, the webinar was recorded and the materials will be available in a couple of days on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. Our next live webinar is on Tuesday, July the 28th at noon, and the topic is The Art of the Lean Canvas with Bill Schloff presenting. Again, we offer free individual counseling, so if you want to take advantage of that, please go to our website and click Request a Mentor, or you can use the link that we showed at the beginning of the program. And on behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank you all for attending today, and special thanks to Cliff Ennico for presenting. So stay well, everyone, and have a great day.